How long have you got?
It's under 3,000.
It's unmatched. It's not matched, so it's okay. Anyway, you're gonna make it the van.
They're changing.
We've got 2 hours left.
It's unmatched. So it's quite good.
Out of how many hours?
Presume 48 hours. There's not big match.
You got 5. You got 5 on you. So you put 5 on for me.
Didn't mean it that way.
No.
What's the name that do?
What?
What's the name that do? Ramadan?
No, you put it on whatever. You put your name on.
No, I don't mean that. I don't go rig around.
It's not for you. I just feel it's nice to be something.
You are.
Yeah, that was
One thing to be.
Tolly, how you doing? How you feeling, Tolly? How you feeling?
Is this in your way?
No, it's not annoying. Like I said, the wild's funny yesterday. That's why I worked out the way the wild
I
was.
don't know.
I'm really going to say.
That's Daf Chof Hey Omud Aleph, about 10 lines from the top. And we're discussing the question, what clothes do the Kohanim wear at the time of the pious, at the time of the raffle? It's Machlikas of Nachman and Rav Sheshes. Rav Nachman says that they used to wear big day clothes. They used to wear weekday clothes, ordinary clothes, non-sacred clothes. The question is, why, according to Rav Nachman, did they dafka wear non-sacred clothes? What's the svar?
so that they changed the big guys.
The bullies, Moshe, can you hear me from the back? David, can you hear me? Sure, can you hear me? Moshe used to be much more interactive. Yes, it's move forward. No, yeah, you're not interactive.
So now it's back in there now.
Come on, come on.
What happened?
There's no COVID yet, Moshe.
Yeah, anyway, we're making a high one. So
It was an experiment.
Maybe it's going to COVID.
Or the
Experiment.
Here and there.
Not right.
Oh, the coat. Good evening. Right.
Much back in.
Now I've got to
Again.
behave.
Fridge, where's your fridge?
But now you have to answer on the spot. You have to move a bit more to the right or to the left. Right. No.
I can't stick my legs.
Again, Rav Nachman says they wore only non-Kodesh clothes. Moshe, why? Why would they dafka? What's wrong with wearing Kodesh clothes? Okay, Ben, what's the reason?
The bullies.
Bullies. If they would have to change their clothes before they do the avodah, so then they wouldn't have a chance. You can hear me? You can hear. Let me take this. If they wear Kodesh clothes, so the bullies would say, well, I'm already in the clothes. Let me go and do it. Oh, somebody else wanted. Who cares? So Nachman says they dafka made them wear weekday clothes. Rav Sheshes says, on the contrary, they would dafka wear Kodesh clothes, which is how we pass them. Why does Rav Sheshes say they would dafka wear Chama? What's the reason? Why dafka Kodesh clothes?
Otherwise, they would probably do it without.
Very good. Let's say suddenly somebody gets chosen, right? Levi's a Kohen. Levi gets chosen. And he's wearing his weekday clothes, and it's his turn after months and years of waiting. It's his turn to do Tumas Hadeshen. What will he do? He'll run up the Mizbeach and quickly do Tumas Hadeshen. But he can't because he's wearing weekday clothes. So we dafka want him to wear Kodesh clothes. Yesterday we bought a Beis which Rav Nachman used as a support for himself. Today we're going to find a Beis which Rav Sheshes tries to use as a support for him. Omar Rav Sheshes, it's 10 lines down on Chof Hei Amud Aleph. Omar Rav Sheshes, how do I know? It's the Tanya. Lishkas HaGozes Kvin Basilki Gedoyle Hoysa. Basilki, basilic. What's a basilic?
Basilica.
That basilic is a huge, very tall building. A dome building. The Lishkas HaGozes was a very, very tall building. Pious b'mizrocha, the raffle, the lottery will take place on the eastern side. The Zokin Yeshiv b'Ma'avova, a Talmud Chacham will sit in the west to oversee that there will be no halachic shilas. The Kohanim would stand as a circle. Buchla is approach. Some women, to keep something close, they wear like a golden circle. So the Kohanim would stand as a circle. One in charge would come. He would take the hat of one of them. Now, The word mitznefes, who knows Torah? What does the word mitznefes usually mean? A hat. But it's usually more than just a hat. Usually when the Torah uses the word mitznefes, it always means the Kohen Gadol's hat. If you look in the Torah never uses the word mitznefes for Kohen Hedget's hat. Now let me ask you, okay, we'll see that in a minute. That's his right and what the Kodesh clothes because they're wearing the special hats. But wait a second, but why mitznefes? They should say mikbas. A Kohen Hedget wears mikbas, not mitznefes. It's a very big problem. It's a huge problem. That the fact is a Kohen Hedget wears mikbas, a Kohen Gadol wears mitznefes. So how
the other way? Because mothers
no,
made their Kohen
let's get to it slowly but surely. Again, if it Torah says mitznefes, and the Torah uses for Kohen Gadol, why over here does it mention for Kohen Hedget? Obviously, now maybe the Kohen Gadol was part of the raffle. Why not? Why can't we say? Why can't
Kohen Gadol?
He could choose to do it.
He's allowed to take no to chilek b'roish or makiv chilek b'roish. He can do whatever he wants. So it can't be that the Kohen Gadol is there. So the question is, how can it say over here mitznefes? Tosfos asks the question. And Tosfos in fact says that not only does mitznefes normally mean Kohen Gadol, but mitznefes actually means a small hat. Mikvas means a big hat. And he says the Kohen Gadol, because he wore the tzitz, which went under his forehead, he didn't wear such a big hat. It was only on top, not below. The Kohen Hedget didn't have a tzitz, so he would have a bigger hat. So it makes the question even stronger, because the mitznefes means literally. The Tosfos' main answer is that what the words of Chazal and the words of the Torah are not always the same. And when Chazal use the word mitznefes, they mean any Kohen's hat. Okay. So again, he took the hat off one of them. But Yoidin, there was no Shemenu Paris Mascha from him, the raffle would start. We start that with the Chol, mitznefes big the Chol, does anyone wear weekday clothes and mitznefes? Answer and yes. Because the Tony of Yehuda Timur Shua by Yehuda Kohen Shosel Emek saying this over the Sochit. A Kohen that the mother makes for him a shirt can do Avodah Sochit. He can't do Avodah Tzibur. Why can't he do Avodah Tzibur? Because it's not yet given to the Beis Hamikdash. Has to come from the Tumas Halishka. But he can do Avodah Sochit. So therefore, over here we have a situation where that it was considered a big day chodesh. So the question is, over here the word mitznefes, did it mean big day kodesh, which is the normal explanation, or did it mean a special hat, which his mother made him, which is big day chodesh? Right. Omar Abai. Shma mino. From this we see Lishkas HaGozes, the Lishkas HaGozes, Chetzu BaKodesh v'Chetzu b'Chol. It was half in the kodesh and half in the chol. Here is a picture. Maybe they could take a picture of it. Not a major picture, but which one? Just the bottom one. The Lishkas HaGozes. What was Lishkas HaGozes normally used for? Does anybody know? What did it usually? No, not for wood. What was Lishkas HaGozes used for? It was usually the place where the Sanhedrin sat. Lishkas HaGozes Misham Teitzei Torah. Not only that, does anybody know why it was called Lishkas HaGozes? We once mentioned it very, very briefly. Levi, why was it called Lishkas HaGozes?
Everyone fits in.
Gozes means to hew, to smooth the stone. What does it say? Let's read out the words.
No, I mean translation.
What does it say? Lishkas HaGozes. What does it say?
The hall of
Hewed stones. So there's two explanations. Can you see it was a dramatic hall, very, very tall, beautiful stones, and you can see there's a Talmid Chacham from the Sanhedrin sitting down. I don't know if you can see him. And they are standing in a circle, by the way. They're standing in a full 360-degree circle. And somebody's missing his hat, and they're taking and accounting from him. Now, half it was in the Kodesh, and half it was in the Chol.
The guy was sitting, was in the stone, right?
Oh, why was he in the Chol?
You're not allowed to sit.
Oh, very good. See, it was worth coming forward. See, if not for that, we want to learn this halacha. How can he sit? How can he sit? It must be that he was sitting in the Chol. Oh, so half the chol, so maybe all of it was in the chol. The halacha is you wouldn't do a raffle to do the avodah in a mokim chol. You would have to use it in mokim kodesh in a more holy place. So half it was in the chol. No, so half of it sat in the chol. He sat in the chol, but they stood in the kodesh. Now,
border's halfway through.
Border's halfway through. Very good. Now, by the way, it's called Gozes because hewn stone is particularly precious. And they wanted the place of the Sanhedrin to look majestic, right? But like bells, Beis should give you a certain thing, transcendence. Another explanation is Gozes means it was cut. There they decided and they cut through all shayas. So nowadays, you know, Mishtabur, I don't know how many times it's southern every single thing that he says is machlekes, this machlekes, that way. This just Gozes, there was such thing as a machlekes. There was a psak, everything was decided, it was completely decided upon. So said Rabbi, Omar Rabbi Shmam no nishkas chetzim kodesh chetzim b'chol. Shmam no shnei psochim hayora. Not only was a half in the kodesh and half in the chol, it also had two entrances. Echad b'soach b'kodesh, v'echad b'soach b'chol.
On this picture, it's split down the middle.
Yes.
It doesn't look like they're on the side of it.
I know they've done it here. If you look carefully, they've done a different picture. They've done the half in the kodesh. Here they've done a half a circle. The reason is because the Sanhedrin would sit in a moon shape. So that is their half a bench. They put some effort. If you look carefully in the picture which Ben put up, there's like a bench which looks like a moon. Can you see? Agan Hasa, crescent. Oh, that's a very good word. It's in posh English. So the point is, because that's how they used to sit. Why would they sit in a crescent? Because that way they could discuss better everything. You could hear each person out better, right? If you have people back to back, you can't see each other, etc. So the Gemara says like this. Abaya proves it had half in the Kodesh, half in the Chol, and it had two entrances. You cannot sit in the Zara. You cannot sit in the Zara, except for who? Malachei Beis David. It was one of the most tragic, probably the most tragic story in Kaisel began with this, because Yoma and the Vot, what Chazal tell us, was the greatest Talmud Chacham of his generation. But he realized if he would go to Beis Hamikdash, he wouldn't be able to sit because he wasn't Malachei Beis David. And because of that, he made the whole Klal Yisrael do Avodah Zarah. And he literally destroyed Klal Yisrael because he did not want them to go to Beis Hamikdash because he wouldn't be able to sit. Now, there's a very, very interesting taste over here, the second to bottom taste, and it's a fascinating taste because this discusses a very big issue. What did the Kohanim do in the Azor? What did the Kohanim do in the Azor? Shchita, Zvika, Kabbalah, many, many different things. But one of the things they had to do is they had to eat certain korbanos. Which korbanos did they have to eat in the Azor? Right, shout out all the korbanos. What? Chatos. What else? Nope. Shlomo they didn't have to eat in the Azor. Shlomo could eat. Chatos, Olam they didn't eat. There was nothing to eat. Oshom, Menachos. Now imagine all this food had to be eaten. What? The Dovis is a generic term. The Dovis could be a Nidvas Oilo, Nidvas. The question is, did the Kohanim eat standing up? What would you say, Levi? Oh, you like this
I was talking about the cold floors and barefoot.
Levi, no. They had to eat everything standing up.
If I remember,
So we just said you can't sit. We just said that you can't
if I remember
sit.
correctly, it's something to do with the bare feet and the cold floor.
That's right. But that's why they're always not well. But it doesn't talk about when they actually ate the chatos, did they eat it standing up? Tosis brings a machlekes with showing him, did they eat standing up or not? Pashtus from the words of this Gemara, what would you say?
Yes.
You have to stand because the Mishnah says, Ein yeshiva zamachal beislavik ulvat. We just said the other bit of destroyed Klal because of that reason. And therefore, all had to stand. Imagine eating all your food, Levi, standing up. When we were younger, we were told if you eat standing up, you get fat legs. But it says menachas, all the menachas had to be standing up. Then Tesis brings another shit on the shade that no, that you are allowed to sit while you are doing a mitzvah, and eating a korban is doing a mitzvah. Or as if that's the case, doing the raffle, they should also sit. No, that wasn't as important a mitzvah. And according to those who showing him, you are allowed to sit. When Mashiach comes, you've got to practice according to one shitta. And Teis says even more than that. To tell them to eat standing, there's another problem with eat standing. Does anybody know? Anybody can guess it should definitely deserve a lechem or two. The Torah says lemoshcha. We had it that eating the korbanos had to be done lemoshcha for greatness. We once mentioned psachim that you were supposed to eat a korban when you were full, because a poor man eats when he's hungry, a wealthy man eats when he's full. So the moshcha for greatness, korbanos were eaten when you're full. So Torah says eating standing, that's not considered. A king doesn't eat standing. So Torah says, how could it be? Anyway, it's machikas. The Mashiach comes, will decide for us, but it's an interesting ma'amokim to discuss it. Oh.
Where about was the Muslim tea?
They had to stand anywhere in Azar. As this kind of as this saw. They weren't allowed to sit in Ezra's Nashim. What? Yes, they had earthenware. We talked about the fact that every time they had earthenware, they'd have to then destroy it. They had fires.
No, where the carving, they had the carving on the plate on the floor.
Yeah. No, holding it. Oh, if they sat, so they could sit on the bench and then they could eat it. You should stand in the Azor. So half of it had to be Bekodesh because we want the raffle to take place in the Kodesh. The Tosfos asks an interesting question. Why is it, if we want to do the raffle Bekodesh, why do we use a room which is half Kodesh, half Chol? I would find a much better place. Go out to the Azor and do it completely bakodesh. 2 answers in Tosfos. No, but the raffle was done standing. The legend, right? He couldn't stand for a few minutes to Paskin. Okay.
They always sit from the Paskin, no? Isn't that a thing?
Yeah, but I hear. Tosfos 2 other answers. One is they stood in a circle. If you stood in a circle, somebody's going to have his back to the Beis Hamikdash. We didn't want that. Another third Tosfos says because one of them would have the hat taken off. It's not nice standing there so wearing a hat. They didn't wear a cap underneath because they didn't. Because the chatzitza, very good. So therefore they had to do it in the Lishkas Beis HaMoikad, in the Lishkas HaKosas. Okay. So the Gemara proves half of it is in the Kodesh. Why? Because the raffle had taken the Kodesh. Half of it was Bechol because the Zakin sat. Now he's going to prove that only was a half a Kodesh, half Bechol, but in fact it had 2 entrances to it. And that is proven from one simple halacha, that any room which opens up either to the Kodesh or to the Chol has the status for where it opens up to. So if it opened up to the Kodesh, even if it's half Bechol, it is all Kodesh. If it opens up to Chol, even if it's all in Kodesh, it's all Chol. The only way to reconcile that's half Kodesh, half Chol is how? There are 2 doors, 2 entrances. Is that clear? It's not with me. If a room is in the Chol and it's open to the Kodesh, it's all Kodesh. If the room is in the Kodesh, opens up to the Chol, it's all Chol. The only way to say it's half Kodesh, half Chol is if it's got 2 entrances. So if you look very carefully in this picture which you started off, you've got the Lishkas HaKosas, the 1 entrance into the Kodesh and 1 entrance into the Chol. Can you see? The Ezras Yisroel is Kodesh. It's very confusing. Ezras Yisroel and Ezras Kohanim is Kodesh, Ezras Noshim is Chol. Already, of course. That's right. Already, inequality already existed. So it's like this. Wie sagt er doch besser ich noch besuch le kodesh doch nicht ba aber was da lishkes abdus bechol besuch es le kodesh tegen kodesh wie sagt er doch besuch le kol pas besuch mit abdus le kodesh besuch es le tegen kol and love shvam no shte besuch bo lo ech besuch le kodesh ech besuch le kol one was open to the kodesh, one was open to the chol. Right. Says the Gemara. Haparis Hashedi, the second raffle. What was the first raffle for? What was the first raffle? The second raffle. Now, this second raffle, the Gemara is going to Paskin. 1 person won it, and 12 people after him got it. So 13 people got it. So let's say you're all standing in a row, and let's say Betzalel got it. So then we count 12 people next to him, and that's how we did it. Haparis Hashedi, mi shoichet, who's on the shecht? Mi zevek, who's on the sprinkles? Mi medashim mizbeach hapnimi, who cleans mizbeach hapnimi? Mi medashim some menorah, who cleans out the menorah? By the way, the Mishnah missed something out. Anybody who guesses it should also deserve a lechaim. What Mishnah miss out? Anybody who knows anything about Kohen should shout out. Very good. Who catches the blood? Oh, two lechaims. It's an unbelievable question.
What was the first one?
It says, Mi shoichet, who shecht, mi zevek, who's does zvika. What do you mean? You missed out a stage. Who's going to catch the blood? You do shchita? You work the shchita?
Not in the Beis Hamikdash.
Not Beis Hamikdash.
Not yet.
Because the person who's shechita can't do the.
No, so somebody else had to do it. So who's the one? Again,
This one person does everything.
No. I said it. Here. There's 13 people going to be mentioned in this Mishnah. Mishech is first.
Just like the one who did the parents was able to choose.
No, okay, that's another. You're quoting. No, first of all, the Gemara doesn't say like you. We'll see the Gemara. But anyway, but I said it's still a question. Whatever it is, it's a very strong question. Mishechet who shechted is 13 people. Mizevek, Mimedash is Lachapnimi, Mimedash and some menorah. That's 4 already. Somebody came up to me. Quite a harsh person. He said, I'm stuck on this Mishnah. He said, that's the problem when you learn too fast. He said he counted 14 because he counted Mimale Vom Lakevesh as number 5. But the problem is, it's not. Mimale Vom Lakevesh is just a title. Who took limbs to the ram? And then afterwards, we're going to list out all the rest. It's a bit confusing. Because I'm stuck. I said to this.
Lottery. Why don't you just go to the alphabetical order so like that? So everybody gets even chance. It's just called strong.
No, because not every day would everybody be there. It'd be very complicated.
Lottery everyone's even chance.
And that's a big computer.
You got the guys who always win. The guys
As long as the person goes back in after he wins, it's still got some.
Now, we took every single korban tomid, listening,
So it gets you
Not in the first.
Every single carbon atomic was split into 6 parts of an animal. Can you imagine taking an animal and splitting it into 6 parts? By the time we finished, hopefully, we will have 5 different opinions as to the order of how to bring the carbon atomic. 5 different shittas. 5 different shittas how to bring the carbon atomic onto the Mizbeach. So you split the Mizbeach into 6 parts, and everybody agrees. The head was the first, and the kovayim, the insides, was the last. So you've got 4 parts in the middle, and that's going to be a 5-way machlokas. What was going on? And we'll see. The more discuss it. I made a chart for myself. I couldn't find it in the making chart, but we'll see it slowly but surely. So Bimalev Kemesh is a title. Who will take the limbs to the back? So the first one is Avosh V'Regel. That is the head and the right foot. Right, the right foot. The right foot, by the way, how many feet does that one have? 4. Oh, so here we say right foot, we mean the back one, because the hind foot. Why we'll see, we'll discuss it, but I said why the right foot? The right foot is more important than the left foot. And the more explains the head doesn't have much
the
meat.
leg or just the foot?
No, it's the leg, it's the entire leg. So again, now here you have to be very careful how to read the Mishnah. Harosh V'Regel is one person. The 2 hands is another person. Oketz V'Regel, that's the tail, and the left leg that's the 3rd person. V'Achoza V'Agero, that is the breasts and the neck, is the 4th person. Ushtea Defano is the 2 flanks, that's the 5th person. V'Akrovayim, and the inside is the 6th person. V'Asulis is the flowers, the 7th. V'Chavitim, that's the Kohen Gadol's pancakes. V'Yayin is the wine. If you count, 6 for the korbanos, 3 for the sulis, chavitin, and the yain, plus 4. No, he didn't have to. He didn't. It was just he didn't have to do anything. It was just from him. And 4 were sheichet, zevek, cleaning the inside mizbeach, cleaning the menorah. That's 13 altogether. Again, 6 of the korban, 3 of that the menachas. That's the menachas, the chavitin, and the wine, and 4 to shech, to zevek, clean the inside mizbeach, clean the menorah. He argues that this 6, you split it in the wrong order, but rather not the order which you've mentioned, but the order which an animal walks. The Gemara describe how you split an animal according to the way it walks. Right? I mean, for example, the hands come before the tail, because when an animal walks, the hands comes first. Okay, the Mishnah, the Gemara discuss it. Now, here the Gemara asks to Shaila, which I've already given away with that, and says that the Gemara asks to Shaila, did they do 13 different lotteries? Or 1 and the next 12 won it. The Gemara says for every single one was another raffle. They did 1 and the next 12 people won it. They did a separate lottery for every single one of these 13. There were 4 raffles. If you say they made a separate one for every one of these 13 jobs, that's more than 13. Says, that's not a proof. 4 times they gathered for a raffle. That means you've got no proof. Perhaps there was 4 gatherings for the raffle, and one of them they did 13 different raffles, and you've got no proof that they did 1 and the next 12. So the Gemara says from here you've got no proof. Toshima, top of the page of Beis. Oh, this is what Levi was shouting before, which I'm very impressed because it's not in the Gemara and Yoma still now. So you must have seen it in a different sefer. That the halacha is that one of the people would win the raffle to get the keteros. The keteros, what did you do? One person would take coals from the outside mizbeach. Where did you sit? Avodas hakobonos? There you go. One person would take coals from the outside mizbeach and carry them into the inside mizbeach, and one person would carry this. What's a good word for it in English? Frankincense. No, what? Incense. And incense, very strange word. People don't use it as a common day. Keteros. And he would put it on the inside of his mizbeach, put one on top of the other. So the question is, one person would win, but who would get the second one? So the Gemara says like this: there was not a separate raffle for the fire pan. And the Kohen Shizachar v'Keteros, one of the Keteros, only the Imo, you say the person is right, I'll say to Sham, I'm not a Kohen. Sham would say the person is right. It's a Chemi b'machto. So you see over here that you do 1 and the next person wins. It says, well, no, that's not a proof. It is 1 avodah. Since it's 1 avodah, because it's one job, it's supposed to, you need the 2 work together in tandem to make it work. Ekedami dafke machta v'keteres techoda avodah. That's one job. Al v'shar avodas boi pious. All of the avodas require a vafel. Says, well, no, you've got no proof. Machta is tichle sakta tchaminu over l'shchicha ma'asalto u'ma'as to make people rich. Nasim pious if they ask for kamash palom. The Gemara says like this. We've got a question regarding the 13 raffles of our Mishnah. Is it a separate one for each of the 13? Or is it one and then the next 12 people next one is right or win? Says the Gemara, by Keteris we see Shittas of Yehuda is what? There's no separate raffle. He just asks the person is right. In the first version of the Gemara said, I've got a proof. If Rabbi Yehuda says you take the person on your right, similarly over here, we should take the next 12 people on your right. Says the Gemara, no, you can't compare. Keteris, it's one avodah. Here it's 13 different jobs. He's cleaning his back, he's cleaning Manoah, he's shechting, he's doing zvika. It's completely different jobs. In the second version of the Gemara wants to prove the other way around. The fact that Rabbi Yehuda tells us only by the Keteris that we don't make a separate raffle, and rather we join on with the other person, means that normally speaking, we just do we do a separate raffle. That means the second version uses the same halacha and proves the other way around. The first way says if we see it like this, we should see it like that. The second halacha says no. The Afka by Keteris we say like this, but everything else is not like that. It says, well, no, we've got no proof either. Because could be, because you said the reason is because there could be a different reason. It could be because it makes people wealthy. Since it makes people wealthy, you'd have a havamina that even though it's one avodah, we should make a separate raffle. But for over here, by the other 13, you've got no proof. So the Maisa, we've got no proof from Keteris, either because it's a special avodah, or because it works together, you can't prove from it to other things. Tell Shema, finally, a final and definite proof. The Tani Rabbi Chia, no lechol avodah avodah b'fais, and they didn't do a separate avodah raffle for each one. And the Kohen Shazach v'Tomid Shnemos Echad v'Kohenim Meshochin Imo Yishma Mimah. So whoever won, the 12 people next to him would win. Oh. So now the Gemara asks the question which Salih was challenged, was bothered with, and that is, how can we should say sheichet? What about the Kabbalah Sadah? Who catches the blood? Sheichet v'Kabbalah. They don't shecht it. The halacha is you have to catch all the blood. All the blood. Now it doesn't mean literally all the blood, it means all the blood that is spurting. Right? I've never actually seen shchita, when you see shchita of chickens, I've never seen shchita of animals. It seems there's a very, very strong spurt in the beginning, and all that spurting, that is, maybe you could give us. What? How much blood comes out? How much blood? How can you catch it if it spurts the ceiling? How do you catch it?
The way they have to hold it is that they hold the vessel where it shoots from the neck. So
you have to catch all the blood.
You aim it.
Next time you have to video.
That's
When
the
they
table
check
of
the-
something,
do it at the
yeah.
same time.
Skip that.
No, it's the only one. These are the shaftim table.
The shaftim's table.
It's
Leave it,
the
you have to
shaftim,
video it for the next time either.
Put on the group.
You allowed to? Really?
I'm sure nowadays on YouTube you could see it.
Yeah.
I'm all right.
Okay. Now, which part is more important? Catching the blood, the third on the Mizbeach?
Probably his back.
Third on the Mizbeach. Third on the Mizbeach is far, far more important. That is the kapor. If we allow the one who catches if we tell the one who does the zvika to catch the blood, Levi, if we tell the one to do the zvika to catch the blood, what's going to happen? He won't catch all the blood. He's so excited to do zvika, he's not going to stand around and catch all the blood. He'll be rushing off to do zvika.
He's not allowed to do that.
Oh. No, so what? It doesn't matter. No, that's not true. The zvika of the dam was not totally on the keter, so that's not true. The zvika was between, we passed not like Abba Shol as far as I know. So it's a 5 candles, then the dam atomid.
What's the damatomid?
Damatomid, and then yes, right. They wait for the keteris, they waited for the. They didn't wait for the keteris, they waited for cleaning the 5 candles.
Problem. It's not.
You still have to wait.
You have to wait.
Yeah, okay, I have to think about that. I think that. Okay. The Gemara says that if we allow the one who catches the blood to do zvika, he won't bother be catching all the blood. He'll be so excited to do zvika. So we should allow the sheikh to do. The problem is, if we allow the sheikh, because zvika is much, much, much more important. All the kapara, we said it to Shlah. What did he say? So what? But only the zerk is mechapa. We asked a second ago, what's more important, the kapara or the the halacha is that he saws it out to shecht. If we tell that the one who shechts the catch, obviously we don't need to tell the kohen to do so because only the kohen is allowed to catch the blood. But sometimes we'll end up with the Yisrael shechting, and he'll be so used to the idea that the one who shechts catches it, he'll end up doing it. So go Ashana. Toshima Ben Cotton also Yud Beis died the cure. He made 12 taps for the cure. Why did he make 12 taps for the cure? This Yud Beis Echva Kohen Masukim Tom catch the dem Bagnim Vasachas. In order that all the kohanim should be able to, without having to wait for each other, should be able to wash their hands and feet at the same time. Now, how many kohanim were mentioned in our Mishnah?
13.
13. So why only 12? The answer: the sheichet could be Yisrael. Now, if the sheichet is one who catches the blood, so he also needs to wash his hands and feet. The answer is it must be that one who does zvika catches the blood. Besides that, the sheichet mekabel tzleisavai must be 13. The leshalav shmamino zurek mekabel shmamino. So it's a way that the zurek catches. Omar levach beid rov lavashaf nona mitanina shochet al sheichet the kibul mekabel ubolo lizrek shmamino. The Mishnah says clearly the one who catches it, he did the zvika shmamino.
When Yisroel washed his hands and feet, he's not bothered.
No, Yisroel does not need to wash his hands.
Feet is not to wash hands.
That's right. Very good. Very good point. A Yisroel never has to do Kiddush Tavah. We said this actually very quickly yesterday. Whenever the Torah uses the word kohen, we learn it has to have all the halachas of kohen. 4 clothes, 5 clothes is no good. So, for example, Yisroel didn't need to wear the 4 clothes either. There's no din. It's not a din now. Okay.
Washing hands is not.
You would have thought washing hands.
Yeah,
just
he's
to
washing
be
hands.
tall
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It's part of the avoid.
He has to be Torah. He has to be Torah. Unless he's standing outside the zone with a long knife. It's very important to point out the Yisroel does not even need to be Torah. In theory, he could stand with a very long knife outside the Azor and shecht
Does
with
it
a
not
knife.
make the knife tummy?
No, not if he's got a lesser level of tumah.
Right.
Okay. Very, very briefly, we've got a korban tomit, which you're going to bring on the Mizbeach. And what they would do is, they would skin it, and then cut up into pieces, and then give it to the kohen. Now Rashi tells us that really, in the skinning and the cutting up of the pieces, there can hardly be an argument, because you skin it upside down. You always skin it from the legs down. So you hang it with its legs up, and then you pull the skin off it. So the legs on top and the head's on the bottom. And you cut it as you're skinning it. That is no machlekas. The machlekas is only, you give, let's say, you get 6 kohanim to stand you, and then the 6 kohanim start walking to the Mizbeach. And the question is, the order of the kohanim walking to the Mizbeach, who walks in front of who? Right? It's very, very important. Who walks in front of who? And we're going to have 5 opinions, and each one has a logic to his opinion. So the verse is like this. So B'dazai, what did B'dazai say now? Mishnah, what do you remember? What's the way of walking? First the head and the right leg. Gave her the neck with the breast, because if you think about a cow walking, the neck goes next. Then the 2 hands, because when he's walking, the 2 hands go next. Then the 2 flanks, then the tail on the back leg, and then eventually they come back. Rabbi disagrees. He did it the way of skinning. First the leg and the head of the right foot. Then the tail. Why the tail next? Why the tail next? Because when you're hanging it upside down and you're skinning it, so you're always going from the way of skinning it, and you're always skinning it from the leg. So if that's the case, why the head first? So Rashi tells us we're going to have a drasha, always the head first. Everybody agrees the head first. So first the head, then the tail. Head, because the head always comes first, then the tail, because you're skinning it from the bottom down. Okay, then the 2 flanks, because that's further down. Eventually you do the neck. But we keep the way you chop it up. How you call it? First the head, then you cut up the 2 hands. Then the breast and the neck. Then the 2 flanks. And finally you cut the tail and the left leg. Whatever is more important, whichever piece of meat is more valuable. As we mentioned before, the head always comes first. The breast and the neck is the next most valuable piece of meat. Which follows in the 2 flanks, then the tail and the leg, and then the 2 hands. That the pasuk says that the leg is a better piece of meat than the shoulder. So how could the Beis secondly say the neck is better than the leg? It's not. It's the leg is better than the shoulders. A very weak animal the leg is better than the neck. But a fat animal, the breast is better than the neck. Says Yoma, our Tana also holds go according to the piece of meat. The other Tana of our Mishnah goes according to the size of the meat. And the other Mandana goes according to the fattiness of the meat. So there's 5 opinions, very, very briefly. The Tana of our Mishnah goes according to the size of the meat. The bigger, the better. We always do the head first. I'm not going to talk about the head first. I will always do the intestines last. I'm not going to talk about that either. So our Tana holds you go according to the size. The size is the 2 front legs, then the tail and the back leg, then the breasts and the neck, and finally the 2 flanks. It's interesting that the 2 flanks is smaller than the 2 hands. But as I goes according to the way it's walking, so first the neck, then the 2 hands, then the flanks and the tail. Rabbi Yossi says according to the way you strip it, which is first the tail, then the flanks, then the hands, then the neck. Rabbi Akiva says the way you cut it, 2 hands, the neck, the 2 flanks, then the tail. Rabbi Yossi says according to the fattiness of the meat. The breastbone is the most fatty, then the flanks, then the tail, and finally the 2 hands. Okay. Says the Gemara, my time, but what is the reason? Why does the leg always go with the head? Answers the Gemara, the head is full of bones. And therefore, we know that the head comes first. The head is always put on his back first. The problem with the head is it doesn't have a lot of meat. Since it doesn't have a lot of meat, the kohen taking it feels, and it's not a choshva thing on the mizbech. To compensate it, we tell him take the head with the right leg. By taking the head with the right leg, that way he gets a certain chashivus. Says the Gemara, everybody agrees the head comes first. The Tanya what's a good translation of peda? Peda is like the fats. How does the translate?
And it's fat.
And it's fat. It says not better. There's certain parts of the fat. How do we know the head and the fats come first? In the Parshas Vayikra, it says you should skin the animal, cut it up, and put the limbs on the mizbeach. And when it says put the limbs on the mizbeach twice, it says put the head and the fat. The head and its fat you should put on the mizbeach. The question is, why does the Torah need to mention head and the fat? You've already said, skin it, cut it, sacrifice it. So why do you need to why does it need to specify it? Answers is, Talmud Loma, the head and the fat go first. Why does it need to teach this? That means, why does the Torah need at 2 different places to tell us that the head and the fats go on the mizbeach first? Answers, after you finish cutting the head off, the part which was cut is always full of blood. So in order to make it look more presentable, you would take a piece of fat and you'd cover over the part which had been cut off. And you'd put it on the mizbeach to show a chashivus, to make it nice. So there's 2, the Torah says twice, once to tell you that that's the first thing that goes in the mizbeach, and the second time to tell you that the way you did it was the head and the fat together to cover over the bloody areas, that it shouldn't look messy on the mizbeach. Okay. Well, what's the word for it? We'll stop here, maybe. Okay, Friday, I'd very much like to get. You'll see. Truth matter is, there's not such long daf from next week. We have to work out on Shavuos when we're doing.
We've got to make sure, the
The
barbecue. Barbecue.
I haven't spoken to Sophie yet. I'm curious to know about. I spoke to Sophie before Menachem. He said that we should move into Beis. She said they put it on the Shiur group. If people can mention to Yehuda Steinberg and others that it's important to them, or make a certain allies that work together, then they'll push it. If nobody shows interest, then they'll sure feel.